Tonight's guest is Amanda Juarez. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vic.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your time. Amanda, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, currently moving, so I'm unemployed, between jobs. I love animals, and I draw and paint. That's a passion of mine. I would like to say that I'm good at it. I mean, people have told me that I am. I'm 30 years old. When I was younger, like 18 below, I used to ride horses and all of those things. I was in the wilderness a lot, so being out in the wild isn't new to me. I actually kind of miss it now, being an older woman. And life has been interesting.
Yeah, without fail. Are you afraid to go back into the woods and that's why you don't spend as much time out there as you used to? Or why aren't you spending time in the woods now the way you once did?
Well, I used to live in Southern California, and that's where I had my encounter. And we had horses, and I had friends. I would go riding with them. We would go exploring into the woods and whatnot. The only reason I don't do it anymore is because I live on the East Coast now, and it's not as easy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does make good sense. You were about 7 years old when you had the encounter you're going to tell us about tonight. How do you think that experience shaped your life in both positive and negative ways?
In positive ways, I think it was I got my passion for horror movies. That's kind of weird to say, but I enjoy my werewolf movies since then. I mean, not since then. It was kind of in my teenage years that I started getting interested in them, but the encounter kind of was stuck in my head, so I think that's what made me enjoy them more. It's kind of weird that I would enjoy it because it was such a scary experience. In the negative way, it would be that I would hear a crunch out in the darkness, and my first thought would be Dogman, a werewolf. Something's going to come out and grab me. And it could just be a deer. And my logical mind thinks that it's probably just a deer. Stop thinking that. But my mind first goes to Dogman. So I guess there is a little PTSD around there. Because even if I walk out into the hallway of my house, and if I see something that looks like a figure, my mind will go straight to Dogman. So I guess there's some irrational thoughts in there.
Well, everything you said made good sense to me. For a lot of the people listening, they might have a hard time wrapping their heads around how you could possibly love werewolf movies now that you've had this frightening Dogman encounter, but that's pretty common. A lot of eyewitnesses, after they have their encounters, for whatever reason, they're drawn to movies like that. There's an episode of the show that prompted you to contact me. Please talk us through that.
Oh, the Apple Valley one. Well, Apple Valley is between a mountain range and the little Anza Valley that I live in, and that really hit close to home, and that made me reach out to Vic. That's what did it. I was like, oh my gosh. I wanted to in the past, but I just never did. But after hearing the episode, I was like, I have to. Because it was, like I said, really close to home.
You just mentioned Anza Valley. Is that close to the Anza Borrego Desert?
No, it's a different area. Anza Valley is like a little tiny town.
Okay, I see. Yeah, the reason why I wanted to ask about that is Michael Lawrence from episode 34 and 35. That's where he had that encounter where that juvenile dogman came in the tent with him and sat on his leg. So I was wondering about that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I've been in contact with Mike about coming back on to do a special Q&A show where the listeners are going to submit questions and I'm going to ask them questions that they submit. And I think I'm probably going to hear that next week, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, back on point, when you had your encounter, some of your siblings were with you. Did having that experience together draw you all together, or did it drive you apart?
Actually, no, it didn't drive us together or apart. There was 4 of them with me, and it's like the older ones just kind of like tried to ignore it. They acted like it never happened. And then my younger sister and I, who were closest, it was years after I would speak to her, and she's the only one that actually acknowledged the encounter.
Well, it goes without saying, I'm so glad to hear that she actually acknowledged it. That had to help.
I know it happened, so I think the rest of them were just in denial.
Yeah, well, as you know, people have different ways of dealing with traumatic experiences, so if they think that's going to be the best way for them to come to terms with it, then more power to them. Before we move on, if you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, either way is fine, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. All right, Amanda, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, so when it happened, I was around 6 or 7. It's kind of fuzzy because I was younger. We were in a doghouse, which was in the garden area. And so the layout of the land was, there was our lot, there was the neighbor's lot on the right, and then there was the neighbor's lot on the left. And our lot was, it had to have been at least a football field's width wide, and then 250 yards long. We were out in the middle of nowhere. We were out on dirt roads. It took a bit to get to an actual paved road. And we were up on what they call tabletop in Anza Valley. And there was houses that were kind of far apart from each other. But my neighbors to the left, they had about the same amount of yardage as we did, but theirs was fenced in. And then my neighbors to the right, they didn't have a fenced in yard. And to the back of all of the houses, there was just red shank shrubs. I guess you would call them shrubs. They were like in between a shrub and a tree. And there was a bunch of like blue sage and everything that was back there, and it was pretty dense. It was quite a bit, and if you went out into the back of the houses, it was quite a bit until you met civilization again. Anyways, we were in this doghouse in my mom's garden, quote-unquote garden. It was kind of all over the place, but anyways, my siblings, Bonnie, Don, Joseph, and Jennifer, and I were all crunched into this doghouse, and we were telling ghost stories. My older sibling, Watha, she was in the house with my mom. She was more into boys, so she wouldn't go out into the dirt with us like we were. And I can't even remember how long we were out there for. Like I said, it's been so long. And when we did come out of the doghouse, because we used to let our dogs, we had cats, we had geese, we had big pig, we had chickens, we had goats, we had horses, we had so many things. They were all spread out, but the reason the doghouse was out in the garden was when we would be out in the daytime, we would let the dogs out to roam around the yard. But anyways, we were in the doghouse telling ghost stories, and then we came out, and when we did, we all happened to look towards my neighbor's house, and they had a double wide trailer, and they had a porch light that was pointing away from us on the other side, so it wasn't illuminating anything towards us, but it was enough for us to see what we saw. The light kind of trickled around a little bit to the side of the house, and what we saw, we were frozen in place, and there was something really big right there, like between our house we had that fence, and it was just a little wire fence, and it was maybe 4 feet tall, and this thing had to be double that, so it had to have been at least 8 foot tall. But it was straight on to us, so it's not like I could see a tail or the claws. And it was so relaxed, like it was standing there for a while, like it had been standing there the entire time we were in that doghouse. You could see the ears, the pointy ears. I can't remember if I saw tufts or not. Like I said, I was young, everything's kind of blurred. Its arms were kind of relaxed next to it, and it was the hands were kind of curled up like a gorilla's hands. So I couldn't really see it. Almost like it was, like I said, it was just kind of relaxed. So I couldn't see claws. I couldn't see a tail. I couldn't see if it had the bent legs. I know that wasn't a person, and I know that was not our room neighbors. You could see the hair on it, and it almost looked like a bear, but I know what a bear looks like, and that was not a bear. Because it wasn't as thin as some people describe it, but it was a little thicker. Just a little. And I couldn't see the color of it because, I mean, there was a little bit of light. I think there might have been some moonlight, but all we could see was the silhouette of it. I didn't see its eyes. It was almost like somebody had put a scarecrow right there to scare the crap out of us. I don't know how long we stood there and looked at it, but it eventually crouched down on 4 legs and charged at us. And me being the youngest out of all of my siblings, I felt somebody grab my arm to run. And like I said, we have a football field worth of running away from this thing. Somebody grabbed my arm to run, and I was the youngest, so I wasn't running fast enough. And so without even speaking to each other, they all collectively just picked me up by each limb and ran with me to the house. If that thing wanted to get me, or get us, it could have, in a heartbeat. But it was kind of eerie that it just kind of stood there. We didn't use the front door, which had cement steps, and it was a lot of cement steps. But usually we use the back door, and it had the fenced-in area where we usually keep our dogs at night, if they aren't inside. And it connects to the back porch and the back door. And when we came in, I remember my sister Watha and my mom being in the kitchen, and we came in a panic, obviously. And from that point on, it kind of shuts off. And it was so long ago that I can't remember all the other details of it. I just remember the encounter because it was so terrifying. And later on, down the years, we live in a town that's small enough to where, I mean, we went to school together with people from pre-K to high school. The high school, middle school, elementary was all in the same place. It was a little spaced out, but it was right there in the same place. That it wasn't a big town. And when I was in high school, I can't remember what grade I was in. I remember sitting there talking to my friends, and then I kind of overheard the conversation of these kids in front of us, and he was talking about how his sister watched some creature grab his dog, or her dog, and take off with it. And then he was talking about how many other people were missing their dogs and cats and whatnot. And it all happened on tabletop. At the moment, I lived on the other side of the valley, but I remember my experience with that, and whenever I told people about my experience, my eyes would water, and I don't know, I guess it just kind of brought that fear back inside somehow. And hearing somebody that I've never spoken to say the same thing that I did, it was kind of crazy. And especially being in the same spot. I mean, there was this big mountain range. I think it was Thomas Mountain. Big mountain range. And there was an Indian reservation on the other side of that. And then, I mean, we moved between houses, but it was all within the same little valley. And so I moved from one end to the other, and I ended up moving towards the Kauai Mountain. And that's another Indian reservation. But moving over there, it was flatter, and you saw more coyotes and whatnot. I wasn't scared of the coyotes, honestly. They're kind of more scared of you than you are of them. But, I don't know, it's hearing somebody else, after all of those years, I didn't forget it, but I just kind of put it in the back of my mind. But hearing somebody else say something like that, it brought it all back. Which made me think that I wasn't crazy. Because I was starting to feel like I was. And ever since then, when I hear a rustle in the woods or a crunch in the grass, my first thought goes to, there's a dogman. And it's not, I don't want it to mean like it's like I'm obviously always scared. Because I've come to terms with it. I realize that if that dogman wanted to get us, it would have got us. I mean, we had 100 yards to run. It would have got us. There's no doubt. But ever since then, it's, if I hear something or think I see something in the darkness, my first thought goes to Dogman. And it could just be a deer, which usually it is, because in our new place, we'll take the dogs out and you'll hear a crunch here or there. Or even if you don't, the dogs will look out into the woods. Like, you don't hear anything, but they'll look out there like they see something. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you see? Tell me. But it's, I guess there might be some PTSD there. It's not a lot though, because I've definitely come to terms with it. But when it comes to that stuff, I can't really say much because, like, shark movies too, and I'll be in a pool and see a dark shadow and think, oh my god, it's a shark. So maybe it's just me.
No, it's not just you. Once bitten, twice shy. That doesn't make any different from anyone else. Is it a source of frustration for you that there are so many things about that experience that you can't remember, or do you see that as being a good thing?
Neither, actually. Maybe it's a good thing that I don't remember as much as I did.
Well, I can understand why you would say that. You said that wire fence was about 4 feet tall, but the dogman looked to be about 8 feet in height. You told me that you thought it had actually gone under that fence to get close to you the first time we spoke. How sure are you that it actually did go under the fence instead of over the fence to get to you?
I am not sure at all about that because our dogs would get out all the time and they would dig a hole under the fence. But the size of this thing, I'm thinking it could have just like sprinted over the fence. But we already had turned and ran. I guess my thought of the dogs going under the fence, because I've seen them multiple times doing that, even if you yell at them, they're still running. I think it may not have gone under the fence. If it even went over the fence, I think it jumped over the fence, because there's no way that it would have gone under.
Yeah, I bet you good money it did go over. You said it seemed to be relaxed. Did that put you more at ease or make you more anxious?
Actually, more anxious? I don't know if you've ever had someone just standing there staring at you all weird, like a crazy person.
No, I understand. Yeah, I think we've all been there before, and when they're relaxed like that, that definitely makes it worse, in my opinion.
Well, what makes it worse for me is that I wonder how long it had been there. It was so relaxed that it's like it had been there for hours. So it was probably watching us the entire time, and we just didn't realize.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. How close was it to you when you came out of the doghouse and first saw it?
Had to have been at least 50 feet.
Well, that's pretty close.
Like I said, it was kind of terrifying. And ever since then, there was this one time that, okay, there's a story I have to tell. My siblings and I used to, in the same property, play hide and seek. I think this might have been after, actually. And it would be in the dark. My mom was a single mom. She was super mom. She was amazing. She took care of all of us. And she did it without us even knowing how much she struggled. She was definitely super mom. Now that I'm old enough to realize. But we would play hide and seek in the yard. And my poor brother, Joseph, who was the only male, would be the one to be tied up. Like, it's not like you count down, you would tie up. And so he'd have to untie himself to come find us within the yard. And there was, like, the horses in the right side of the yard, and then there was the red shanks and stuff on the left side, and then the house in the back. And we would do all that kind of stuff. It didn't bother me that much. It should have. But it didn't. But I remember one time the driveway was really long, and we were at the edge of the fence and the gate to the front of our yard, and I saw eye shine in the back fence, and it was just cat. Now that I think of it, it was just cat. But I saw the eye shine of it, and this was after my encounter, and we were gonna have a race, and they said, let's go, and I'm the youngest, and I beat all of them, and I can vividly remember my brother's face when I passed him, because I was like, oh, heck no. I can't remember how long that was after the encounter.
Well, you're motivated.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'd say. You said it was nighttime when you had your encounter. Did you ever see if it had any eye shine?
No, I didn't see the eye shine. All I saw was a silhouette.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. You were so concerned about getting back to the house that, yeah, I'm sure you had a lot of other things in your mind besides worrying about that.
No, honestly, it's not even that. It's just all I saw was the silhouette. It didn't have anything to shine on. I guess the eye shine. I guess it would need some kind of light. But the light was on the opposite side of it, so I didn't see any eye shine. I just saw the silhouette of it, and it was crazy.
Well, there might not have been any sources of light, but a lot of eyewitnesses report seeing eye shine even if there aren't any sources of light shining and reflecting off their eyes. It's hard to understand, but that's what they report. You said it rushed at you. How close did it get to you at its closest point?
We'll see. As far as it was from us, it was probably 10 feet from the fence in my neighbor's yard. And I don't know how long we stood there and stared at it, but it was so passive aggressive. Like, it was just standing there. And then I don't know if we were supposed to run. That's what it wanted us to do. We were just like dead in our tracks. And then it rushed. And the only thing I can remember was it going on 4 feet, maybe jumping a couple feet within those 4 feet, with those 4 feet, I should say. And that's when I think my memory thinks, did it go under or over? Because I didn't actually see it, but my young mind thinks it went under, but something that big did not go under that little hole.
Yeah, I was having a hard time understanding how he could have made it under the fence if he was that big.
Yeah, I think it was my young mind thinking that it did, and making up stuff.
Well, if that's what happened, you can't be faulted for that. Your encounter happened 23 years ago, Amanda. How often do you think about it present day?
Well, a lot, because I listen to you.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. I'm not traumatized by it. I'm intrigued by it.
Well, if you can say that, then that's definitely a positive thing. How long did it take you to find out what it was that you saw that night when you were a kid?
Since I heard you, which was when I was probably 23.
So it was some time before you found out what that was then.
Yeah, but even then, between the time, I wasn't scared of it. I don't know if that's weird. I mean, I am scared of it, of course, but you know what I mean. I'm not traumatized by it.
Well, as long as you can function in day-to-day life and do the things that you want and need to do, then that's a good place to be. It could always be a lot worse. Are you able to talk openly with your family about that encounter, or is that something that present day they just still don't want to talk about?
Well, see, I can talk to my sister Jennifer, which is, it's almost like a ladder. My mom wanted a lot of children, so she had one after another. And my sister Jennifer was before me, and she's the only one that acknowledges what happened. And yeah, I'm able to talk to them freely. I mean, if I know that the person's not gonna be stupid, then I'll let them know about my encounter. And actually, you reaching out to me after I submitted my encounter, I didn't realize that my roommate had an encounter too, so that's crazy. Like, I would have talked to him a lot sooner had I known.
You wouldn't believe how many people out there have had encounters with these things that will never come forward and tell you about them. Family not included, have you told many people about that experience? If so, how did they respond?
I did. I've told a couple people about it. But like I said, it was select few that I feel like maybe would actually believe me. And even then, they kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But I don't care, because I know what I saw. I don't care what they think.
Well, good for you. Yeah, you know the truth, they don't. So it hurts when you try to tell someone about your encounter and they rebuff you, because you look at that as being a reflection on your sanity for having the nerve to even talk about such an experience. But it really happened. It's true. You had that encounter, so if they look at you that way, it's a reflection on them, not on you. So please don't forget that.
No, I'll never forget that. That's something that I will never forget, because somebody doesn't believe what I know that is true. That's all on them.
That's right. Yeah, that's a them problem, not a you problem. But having said that, it's about time for us to get out of here. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yeah, if you have problems in your life about your Dogman encounter, please reach out to somebody, and Vic's the perfect person. I can vouch for that.
Thanks for saying that. I'm just so glad to hear that our conversation helped. Of course, like you said, it wasn't like you were in a really bad place because of that experience, but it sounds like it did help you nonetheless, to at least a certain degree, so that's great. That's why I do this. But having said that, thanks again so much for your time, Amanda. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all the details of that experience with us.
Well, thank you for reaching out to me.
Well, you know you're welcome. Thanks again so much. Have a great night.